is now the single most important piece of evidence in this entire case. And new analysis is pointing to something far darker. The data on that phone was not lost by accident. It was wiped by people who were with Nolan that day.
Because Snapchat sends out holiday messages like Happy 4th of July.
But the shock does not stop at the phone. A deeper breakdown now shows that almost every clue, every timestamp, and even the official timeline itself came from the same circle of people already under suspicion. Their interviews, according to multiple accounts, were not confused. They all were lies.
So I was a video journalist for about 7 years, and I've done hundreds of interviews. These are not interviews. These are scripted productions. And you can make something seem like a fact just by how you frame the question. Notice how vague this is.
When those statements are pulled apart and rebuilt from the earliest reports, a different timeline finally locks into place. And that timeline does not just fill in a few missing minutes. It threatens to change everything we thought we knew about what happened to Nolan.
From the first report, this entire investigation has been based upon the timeline that was given to us by Warren and his friends, and then was stamped and sealed by Judge Ashley Cole. But as we've all seen, those timelines have never worked. That's why they're so confusing, because those timelines were just trails to lead to their version of the truth. This timeline is built upon reports given to us before Nolan was found, and also through all the interviews from Nolan's so-called friends.
So where did we all go wrong? Which detail was ignored while the official story was stamped and sealed? And what really happened to Nolan Wells in that missing window of time? The answers are in today's breakdown. Starting right with proof that the phone data was deleted, the family of Nolan Xavier Wells recovered his phone less than 24 hours after he was reported missing on the 4th of July 2026. When Christine Wansley and her sister examined the device, several text messages appeared to be absent. Both of Nolan's Snapchat accounts contained nothing from the 4th of July or the surrounding period. Nolan had routinely posted videos and photographs during social gatherings, making the complete absence of content from that day unusual. Snapchat stories normally remain visible for approximately 24 hours. Because the phone was retrieved within that window, material from July 4 should still have been present if it had not been removed. Wansley described the device as too clean, noting the lack of any saved pictures, videos, or snaps from the holiday.
Secret Service Sam here with a Nolan Xavier Wells update, and something very interesting we have figured out. Nolan Wells' mother, Christine Wansley, said that when her family recovered his phone and checked it, some texts appeared to be missing, right? And his 2 Snapchat accounts had absolutely nothing in them. From the relevant period, 4th of July, the day after, whatnot. The 24 hours was missing. Now, she found that especially suspicious because they recovered the phone less than 24 hours later, when she expected recent Snapchat content to still be visible. As she stated, Nolan was constantly posting on Snapchat, so this is very odd that there is no video content, no pictures, no nothing.
A further detail intensified concerns about interference. Snapchat automatically distributes holiday messages such as Happy 4th of July. That system-generated notification was also missing from the recovered phone. The absence of user-posted content alone might have been explained as a quiet day, but the simultaneous disappearance of the platform's own message suggested deliberate deletion rather than natural silence. Independent observers, treating this as a stronger indicator of tampering, noted that the family sought server-side records precisely to compare what remained on the handset against what the companies still held. Mainstream outlets confirmed the empty Snapchat accounts and the early recovery of the phone. The specific system message detail has circulated primarily in independent analysis.
Now, further, Snapchat accounts had absolutely nothing, correct? This allegedly, on the ledge of allegedly looking down, would confirm that somebody tampered with his phone, because Snapchat sends out holiday messages like Happy 4th of July, and that was not even there. Do you understand? So if his phone said Happy 4th of July and nothing else, then it would maybe be odd, like how did he not post all day? But it would maybe lead us to not be as suspicious as we are. But the fact that this Happy 4th of July message was erased And Snapchat does this. They send you a message, leaves it in the incredibly sus category, and makes it even more valuable that the mother has subpoenaed Cito, all of these Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, everybody, WhatsApp, so we can get answers for what happened to Nolan Xavier Wells.
The sequence in which the phone itself was recovered raised additional questions. 2 location applications produced conflicting results. Snapchat map, opened by the sons of Tashima Hands, showed one position, while Christine's Life 360 application placed the device already on the mainland. The family tracked the phone themselves and sent Hands to retrieve it. The group that had been with Nolan did not volunteer the device. After a call in which Wansley was placed on speaker, a girl inside the house was asked to fetch the phone from a truck. The process took roughly 15 minutes in a darkened living room where multiple people were watching television. The phone's path ran from the boat to the truck, after the vessel was trailered, to the mainland residence, and only then to the family, remaining in the possession of individuals present during the afternoon. Nolan disappeared. Nolan's car keys were recovered separately and not with the phone. When Elmore Wansley asked for the keys at the house where Nolan had spent the previous night, the resident initially claimed not to know their location. A girl later recalled them on an Xbox console. The delay lasted about 5 minutes and left the father with the impression that information was being withheld.
Did y'all catch this?
You saying during that time, a portion of that, why it was on the phone with Cito, so a portion of that is the Cito call, and that Nolan is not on that boat?
Correct.
So I was a video journalist for about 7 years, and I've done hundreds of interviews. These are not interviews. These are scripted productions. And you can make something seem like a fact just by how you frame the question. Notice how vague this is.
During that time, a portion of that, why it was on the phone with Cito, so a portion of that is the Cito call.
And then he says,
that video that's out there is a representation of who was on the boat during that Cito call.
So instead of you saying this is what happened, you're saying this is a representation, which means that this could have happened at any time, or it could be a simple reenactment. Anytime someone gives them, the friends or even Tatum, a direct question, they soften their claim.
And that is the moment that he is calling Cito and being told.
It has to be some portion of it. The video that I saw was, I think it was a Snapchat.
Everything went more crazy when they saw the interviews given by members of the friend group, including Warren Hudson, Jax Patalo, and Morgan Seymour, followed a consistent pattern. Rather than first approaching established news organizations, the young men appeared sequentially on the Officer Tatum show hosted by Brandon Tatum. Commentators observed that the interviewees supplied smooth, detailed answers that arrived before questions were fully posed, creating the impression of prior preparation. Tatum frequently supplied explanatory framing for gaps in the accounts, citing the sinking boat as the reason for departure, Nolan's decision to remain with a girl named Katie, the decision to leave the phone on the vessel because of salt water, the absence of Nolan's name on the Cito call, and reports of sightings of Nolan still on the island after 5:30 p.m. On TMZ, Tatum acknowledged public criticism that the interview with Warren had been very soft. He responded that not every subject would sit for an interview that made them look worse.
As these kids are just normal people, and I'm going to ask them questions, and I will tell you this, and I'll give you some inside scoop on this. A lot of the reasons why it wasn't a huge pushback on Warren, in some cases, because I had already saw evidence, right? He had already showed me text messages. He already showed me some of this stuff. So my objective was to let him tell everybody else what some of the things I already saw.
When did he show you those things?
A few times, like before the interview, because we went out to Horn Island before we did the interview. Mm-hmm. We were at the Horn Island. So we had a couple things came up there, a couple things came up at Horn Island. Some of the videos that we shared, they had shared with us before we did the interview. We sat down and talked a little bit before the interview, just kind of shooting the crap. We talked to Trayson before interview. We weren't going to even interview Trayson. He just happened to show up at the house that we were doing the podcast on. We ended up interviewing him after we interviewed.
Independent voices, including Jamel Hill, described the choice of Tatum's platform as optically striking. Others noted that Tatum's history of disputing racial framing narratives positioned the friend's statements within a protective interpretive frame. Attorney Ed Pawick, appearing in the same ecosystem, declared the young men 100% innocent before the official investigation had concluded.
Which I haven't yet seen. The interviewer is not asking any uncomfortable questions. And I would love, as an observer with clinical training, I would love to see how they respond to being made uncomfortable. This interview, there was an interaction in this interview that maybe you guys didn't pay attention to. Officer Tatum was asking a question, or ex-officer Tatum was asking a question, and they responded with, well, Brandon, you did this, this, and this. And it told me their level of comfort with this person is quite high, because he is not doing or saying anything to make them uncomfortable. And I would love to see how they handle being uncomfortable. And it's unusual that no question is in any way, shape, or form making them uncomfortable. First question he asked in the segment that they released was, how do you feel about this enhanced audio that I think lacks integrity?
Right.
So you're leading your witness, if you will, by just the way that you worded it. It's an odd way to do that. And in his question, he's telling the interviewee what the answer needs to be.
Right.
And that's really alarming.
Material released through the same channel has been scrutinized for fragmentation and selective presentation. Tatum himself traveled to Horn Island, filmed matching camera angles, and asserted that more than 4 people had boarded the vessel, acting simultaneously as interviewer and scene reconstructor. Witness statements placing Nolan on the island after 4:30 p.m. or as late as 5:50 p.m. have been cited, yet the names of those witnesses have not been publicly released by authorities. The cumulative effect of short, context-poor clips released outside official channels has left the evidentiary value of each piece open to question. Analyses of the Nolan Wells case do not stop at doubts surrounding the friend group interviews. They also isolate concrete inconsistencies in the accounts themselves, particularly the timeline of the 4th of July 2026 on Horn Island.
Did y'all catch this?
I want to say around 3:40, 4 o'clock, an altercation had happened between one of my other friends, and checked on him for about 20 to 15 minutes. I came back, Nolan's boat and the people that he was with were gone.
Last time I personally laid eyes on Nolan was at like 3 o'clock, and he was, front of the boat with the girl.
From the first report, this entire investigation has been based upon the timeline that was given to us by Warren and his friends, and then was stamped and sealed by Judge Ashley Cole. But as we've all seen, those timelines have never worked. That's why they're so confusing, because those timelines were just trails to lead to their version of the truth. But after a month later and a lot of talking, there are more pieces to the puzzle, revealing a pivotal 30-minute window when Nolan disappears. This timeline is built upon reports given to us before Nolan was found, and also through all the interviews from Nolan's so-called friends. The major events are pre-fight, then the fight 1 and 2, leaving the island, and then when most of the young people have gone and left the island. This is key because multiple reports the day after Nolan went missing say that most of the young people left the island by 5.
The initial timeline supplied by Warren Hudson and the others formed the foundation of the early investigation and received public reinforcement from Judge Ashley Cole, Warren's mother. That sequence placed the last sighting of Nolan at approximately 3 p.m., followed by a decision to remain on the island while the group departed around 4:30 p.m. because of a bilge pump failure. Subsequent review found the stated marks failed to align with one another, producing the appearance of deliberate trails leading back to a single version of events. After roughly 1 month, reports filed before the body was recovered, together with interviews of the same circle of friends, allowed a narrower window to be constructed. The events were reordered into a sequential chain: the period before any confrontation, the first fight, the second fight, the departure of the boats, and the point at which most of the young people had left the island. Multiple accounts given the following day indicated that the majority of the crowd had departed by approximately 5:45 p.m. That collective exit time functions as an independent verification marker. 2 additional anchors fix the revised sequence.
The 2 anchors for this report are Javon's report which happened around the time when Nolan was missing. That's why I'm using it. And then the screenshot, that famous viral video that we heard of that time of 4:01 after the second fight.
I want to say around 3:40, 4 o'clock, altercation had happened between one of my other friends. I went and checked on him for about 20 minutes.
He leaves Nolan to go see about the first fight. The first fight happens from your boy Tristan when a white person comes and tries to police him about how he's talking to his white girlfriend. Shortly after, Carter, who is Warren's little brother, continues the fight closer towards the beach. And in that viral video, if you see the height of the individuals, they look a little bit shorter. And then this screenshot says that that video was taken after the second fight around 4:01. Tristan says that Nolan allegedly was not in the fight, but that he was out of frame in that video, which means he's still there. And from Warren, I think Nolan is still in the water by the boats. Warren puts the sequence of fight, second fight, and then him going to see the issues with the boat. There is no way that the last time that he saw Nolan was at 3 p.m. because this is now 4 o'clock.
So you get ready to go. There's an issue with the boat.
Okay, yeah.
And this is
Well,
what
yeah, this
ended
led up to that. That's what I was saying.
So the
Okay.
fight happened with your brother, the scuffle.
We're getting closer to that 4:30 p.m. departure time from the GPS, but that doesn't mean that that's when they try to start leaving the island.
I came back, Nolan's boat and the people that he was with were gone.
To me, this is the infamous moment where Warren claims that they said for Nolan to get on the boat, but then Katie says that she thought he left with them.
Nolan was sitting by the boat with that Katie girl, and my buddy yelled for Nolan, get on the boat. We're leaving. The boat's having issues. And no, he didn't say that, but he was panicking.
The thing about the two boats that I said, there were two boats tied up. So therefore, I didn't know which boat Nolan exactly was on because they were both tied up.
This is key. Javon says the boats, plural, are gone, and then Nolan was gone. This is so important. Tristan leaves the island in his boat, but then also all three boats that came to the island leave around the same time. Warren said that Palm Beach had left, the Triton that we know about, and then the Tide Line is Bart's boat.
Javon Williams' account places him checking on a friend involved in an altercation for 15 to 20 minutes. When he returned, Nolan's boat and the people who had been with it were gone. Because the check occurred near the moment Nolan disappeared, the statement serves as a temporal anchor. A second lock is supplied by the viral video whose screenshot records a time of 4:01 p.m. taken after the second fight. The first confrontation involved Tristan and carried an element of racial and social tension. A white individual attempted to police the manner in which Tristan spoke to his white girlfriend. The second fight, continued by Carter, Warren's younger brother, moved closer to the beach. The individuals visible in the 4:01 footage appear shorter than Nolan's documented height of roughly 6 feet 1 inch to 6 feet 2 inches, supporting the inference that the clip captures the second group rather than Nolan himself. Tristan stated that Nolan did not participate in the fighting yet remained outside the frame, placing him still in the immediate area at approximately 4 p.m. One analysis concludes that Nolan may have been in the water or near the boats while vessels began to move, or that he may have been drawn into a further confrontation after the second fight, while many participants were intoxicated. Warren's own ordering, first fight, second fight, then attention to the boat problem, cannot coexist with a last sighting fixed at 3 p.m. once the events stretch past 4 o'clock. The moment described as infamous is the claimed call for Nolan to board the departing boat, Katie's belief that he had already left with them, and Javon's discovery that both the boats and Nolan were gone.
Here's why I think we should rule out option one, that Nolan stayed behind. Because one, Katie was still right there. Javon, his real best friend, was still there, and even his coach was there around 3:30. So how does he not see any of those people? So in my opinion, he either leaves in a boat, the timeline kind of pushes him to that type of decision, or he's still in the water when there are boats moving around and are intoxicated, or possibly caught in another fight that carries on after the second one, and then multiple boats leave.
The possibility that Nolan remained alone on the island is discounted by the continued presence of Katie, of Javon, and even of a coach in the vicinity around 3:30 p.m. Two primary hypotheses remain. Either Nolan left on one of the boats, or he was still in the water when multiple vessels, including the Triton, the Palm Beach, and a third craft, departed in close succession while the group was intoxicated or still engaged in fighting. Approximately 20 to 24 people had arrived on 3 boats that clustered together. Bart Edmiston Jr. later towed the Triton with the tide line after the bilge failure. The sea tow call sits inside the same interval, placed between roughly 4 and 4:30 p.m., and immediately preceding the GPS departure of the Triton at 4:31 p.m. The caller reported the vessel at the west tip of Horn Island with a failed bilge pump and stated, "We're sinking." When the dispatcher asked whether everyone on board was in good health, the reply was, "Yeah, everybody is on board," with an estimate of about 7 people, none over 21. The Mississippi Department of Marine Resources track shows the Triton under tow for 2.75 miles at low speed before normal operations resumed near 5:25 p.m., and the vessel reached its original dock at 5:44 p.m. If Nolan had already been on the boat, the "everybody is on board" statement would conflict with the claim that he stayed behind. If he was not, the statement is consistent with the friend's version, yet still leaves an unexplained gap between the 4:01 video and the 4:31 departure. Claims of later sightings introduce further friction. Counsel for the friend group has cited 2 Ocean Springs residents who allegedly saw Nolan near 5:50 p.m., roughly 90 minutes after the Triton left. United Cajun Navy materials reference a fight video around 5 p.m., and a statement that by 7:30 p.m., Nolan was nowhere in sight. Independent verification of the named witnesses has not been released by the sheriff or the district attorney. One social media claim that Nolan appeared near a fight at 5 p.m. was immediately contradicted by another person present who identified a different individual and a different boat. United Cajun Navy's own assessment limits the last independently supportable sighting to the interval between 3:23 and 4:27 p.m., stating that anything later exceeds the evidence supplied. The revised sequence therefore tightens the critical window to the period after 4:01 p.m., while leaving the sea tow exchange and the post-5 p.m. reports unresolved. A crucial reason why the family questioned the account of what happened to Nolan lies in his personality. They maintained that the story told by the group of friends was completely out of character for him. Nolan Wells grew up under a household rule that treated location sharing as non-negotiable. His parents maintained an open-door policy. If any of the children, including Nolan, ever felt unsafe, even after sneaking out, they were to drop a location pin immediately, and the parents would come, regardless of the hour. Elmore Wansley has described driving to pick up one of the younger sons at 2 a.m. when the boy was 15. The family used Life 360 in both directions. The children tracked the parents as routinely as the parents tracked them.
We always said is we never want to get to a point where in front of our kids we're just like, really going at it. We want to talk about it, right? Mm-hmm. And so teaching them that, hey, when you're in relationships like this, intimate relationships, you have to be able to communicate. And that's one thing we told them, even just amongst yourselves, we always told our kids, open door policy. If you're ever out, even if you snuck out the house, which they didn't do, but if that ever came, if it ever happened, we would be like, if you're in a situation where you're uncomfortable, drop that location. We are coming. It does not matter.
Yes, I love it.
We went to pick up the 15-year-old at like 2 o'clock in the morning. We do not play about our kids.
That's beautiful.
Nolan frequently called his mother after seeing her location change, simply to ask where she was and to request items from the store. Elmore also drilled a set of practical instructions. Use 2 ears and 2 eyes before the mouth. Study the character of people who approached. Keep the circle small and judge by actions rather than appearance. These practices formed the baseline the family later measured against the account that Nolan remained on Horn Island without his phone. That same baseline included constant documentation. Christine Wansley has stated that at every gathering Nolan recorded video and took photographs. She recalled him pulling her into frames even as she prepared for bed. He maintained 2 Snapchat accounts, and the family was accustomed to seeing content after he went out.
I think he was wanting to do something with broadcast and media because he did that in high school. He was part of this group call it GTV or something, but it taught him how to, do videos, edit videos, and that's what, he was helping his mom edit when she was doing her stuff online.
I didn't want to do social media.
Stuff,
he made me.
But
and it's funny because like even the kids would obsess over Life 360, like watching us.
Yes.
This was something Nolan did a lot too. He would call, Ma. Yes, baby. What's up? What's going on? What you doing? Nolan, I know you're looking at Life 360 right now. Where am I at? No, I'm not. But hey, since you're out, can you bring me da-da-da-da?
Right.
Like,
Dad, have you found any consistencies? Have you spoken directly with any of his friends?
Well, the first inconsistency was you called me and tell me my son stayed on the island to talk to a girl. My son will never do that. That's not in his character. I didn't raise none of my kids to do that. The second thing is, you say he doesn't have his phone. He doesn't leave his phone. I will wake up sometimes in the morning and Nolan will have his phone here right in my face. And I'm waking up cussing and fussing like, boy, you don't get the camera on my face. And he just laughing and giggling and stuff like that. So it's twice. To me, there's two lies that he told me.
When the phone was recovered on the night of July 4, less than 24 hours after he was last seen, both Snapchat accounts contained nothing from that day. Christine and her sister examined the device themselves and described the empty histories as suspicious.
I'm on the phone with him. Now I'm in a panic. I'm running into my room. Elmore was in bed watching a different movie, and I'm like frantic. He's like, what's going on? I'm like, no one is missing. I'm trying to pull up the GPS as I'm talking to him, and at some point he tells me that, I was like, well, his phone says GPS, Life 360, not Snapchat.
Right.
Life 360 says that he's on land, and he was like, well, no, I mean, we have his phone. And I'm like, wait, what? And I'm like, okay. Because at that point, you're telling me, this is coming from Warren, don't worry about it. We're going to find him. It's going to be okay. Don't tell me not to worry. This is my child, my flesh and blood that I brought into this world. And you're telling me not to worry.
We wasn't there to get the phone, but apparently there was some kind of friction with getting his phone.
Yeah.
We don't know what the friction was.
So the phone and the key were at the same location, which was Jack's.
Okay.
For their locations on Snapchat. And so she was like, hey, I can go pick his phone up, not thinking that his car is there, which she stopped everything she was doing. Her and the boys, they went out. Like, we were all out searching for him that night. And yeah, like Elmore was saying, there was an issue, some type of friction. The cops ended up coming and they left. And so then kind of the same thing when we came to pick up the key, Elmore went up there asking for the key, didn't know where the key was, and all of a sudden we know where the key is.
Civil rights attorney Ben Crump has repeatedly cited the absence of expected media together with the broader claim that young people do not voluntarily leave their phones behind. He has also referenced audio of an argument in which a voice demands the return of a phone, though the identity of the speaker has not been independently confirmed as Nolan's. The combination of the safety training, the documentation habit, the empty Snapchat records, the lack of any check-in message from Nolan on the night of July 4, and the fact that both the phone and the car keys returned to the mainland with the group of friends while Nolan did not, forms the core of the family's public skepticism that he chose to remain on the island without the device. Life 360 and Snapchat map data showed positional discrepancies once the phone was tracked on the mainland, adding another layer the family has treated as inconsistent with Nolan's ordinary patterns. The phone itself became the subject of a prolonged procedural dispute. On July 15, after a meeting with Jackson County District Attorney Angel Myers McElrath, Crump announced an agreement for a mutual inspection of the device by experts for both sides, with possible FBI participation, at the Digital Forensics Lab at Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College. The family retrieved the phone from a friend that same night of July 4 and retained possession. Attorney Tyler Cox, representing several of the young men who were with Nolan, later stated publicly that he was prepared to stake his reputation on the assertion that the family had never turned the phone over to investigators.
Well, I think it's strange too. We were all told by Ben Crump from the steps of the courthouse in a public address, I think that was on July 11th, after he met with B.A. Angel Myers, that they were going to cooperate and give the phone over. I don't understand why just now, just I guess last night it came out that they haven't. And so I don't understand why they haven't gave the phone over when our clients, Morgan, Jackson, Warren, have fully cooperated with investigators. I don't understand why we have to do phone dumps, or people feel like we need to do phone dumps and phone extractions and give the Life 360 and the Snapchat information and GPS information. We've done all that, planning on doing as much more as anything they asked us to, but I don't understand why they haven't cooperated given in Nolan's phone yet. I'm at a loss for words with that one.
The district attorney's office subsequently issued a letter on August 12, directing delivery of the phone by 9 a.m. On August 14, the family's counsel characterized the notice as arriving while the parents were out of state and as imposing a deadline of less than 48 hours, which they said undermined confidence in the process. In response letters, local counsel Ahmad R. Smith and the Crump team maintained that the family had never refused cooperation and remained bound by the July 15 understanding of a joint examination. They listed unresolved conditions, the forensic protocol governing scope and method, chain of custody, preservation of any extracted data, access to the resulting files, and return of the device. Attorney Eric J. Hertz, directing the family's private investigation, had contacted the district attorney's office on July 25 while overseas and indicated he would resume coordination upon return. That contact partially accounts for the absence of a fixed appointment through late July. By mid-August, the family's attorneys offered specific dates between August 18 and 21 for the joint examination, placing their experts on standby with 12-hour notice. Public reporting through August 22 continued to state that no formal forensic examination of the phone by investigators had yet occurred. Separate from the Wells phone, counsel for the Friends has noted that their clients voluntarily submitted their own devices to the FBI. The family has also sought additional materials from the state medical examiner's file for review by the independent pathologist, Dr. Roger Mitchell, whose autopsy listed cause and manner as undetermined. Josh Gill, incident commander for the United Cajun Navy, provided an earlier contemporaneous account of the family's posture toward the phone. On the morning of July 5, after Christine contacted him, she mentioned that authorities wanted the device and expressed discomfort about simply handing it over. Gill advised her that she retained the right to be present and to video every step of any extraction. He later stated that she appeared receptive to that approach. On the morning of July 6, before the body was located, Christine sent a message indicating they would meet him after a data dump on the phone. Gill interpreted the message as evidence that some form of data extraction was still contemplated at that hour.
So it didn't say anything about a crime, but we did discuss the phone that Sunday. So the day before he was found, she called me up and we had a discussion about the phone. She said, "Hey Josh, they want the phone." And she said she wasn't too comfortable with sending it to him or giving it or turning over the phone. And here's what I told her. I said, look, that phone was your son's phone, and you've got every right to turn it in and to video everything that they're doing with the phone. Be there for it. If you don't trust the process or some concerns, get your phone and video what they're doing. You know, if you're concerned about losing data, there it is. She seemed to be comfortable with that when I told her that. Look, I'm not law enforcement whatsoever, but I know that she's going through a hard time, and I just wanted to let her know that every part of the step with anything that she has, for her to document if she's afraid of losing some of the data or the integrity of that data.
Right. So in the early stages of the phone, she did express, without any coercion whatsoever that you know of, that she believed that there may have been reason for her to turn that phone over.
Absolutely. I don't necessarily disagree with your opinion. Okay. I've seen the communications with Christine and her family dwindle down after the hiring or onboarding of Mr. Crump. Now, again, I want to make sure that everybody understands I'm going to give the family the respective space that they need. And I will send them motivational messages. Just today I sent one, hey, Miss Christine, I know today's a tough day. It's your son's birthday. Just know that I'm here for you. 110%. If you need a shoulder to cry on, somebody to call, whatever it is, I'm here. Got to thank you, which is all I expected. But what I did was watch lengthy communications turn into emojis or the little heart and then thank yous. And it's fine. It's the natural progression of the way the relationship was. But I do feel that that outside influence had something to do with it, without a doubt. And that's my opinion, right? So it's unfortunate. You know, a young man lost his life.
After the legal team was retained, Gill reported that lengthy communications with the family contracted into brief acknowledgments and emojis. He offered human remains detection dogs to examine one of the vessels. After a 23 to 24-minute conversation with lead attorney Liza Park, the response was that the team would need to think about it and that a non-alert would indicate no body had been present. Gill was never called back to deploy the dogs on that vessel. He has not claimed that Crump issued an explicit order against surrendering the phone. He has described an early willingness to cooperate that later shifted toward controlled joint process, consistent with the written positions the family's attorneys have filed.
I'm here with a Nolan Xavier Wells update, and Nicole Everything has this amazing audio that is bizarre, to say the least. Listen to this.
We got out to the island around like 10:30. Everybody was hanging out, having a good time. And then it came time to leave, and so Wyatt was like, Nolan, get on the boat. Like, come on, we're leaving. And Nolan was talking to that girl, Katie McCormick.
Our analysis today zeroes in on the explosive statement from another friend, not one of the people who have already gone public with interviews, but was right on the Triton boat at the exact moment everything went down. These statements that first sound completely ordinary actually expose a mountain of glaring inconsistencies about the case and about every previous claim the friend group has made, but may relating to the unconfirmed confession letter leaked days ago.
Left because they were like, okay, he's just gonna go with Katie, whatever. Well, then everybody got back in and we were all at Ava's house, and Wyatt was like, where's Nolan? He was like, isn't he coming with Katie and them? And they were like, yeah. And Warren was like, let me call him and ask where he is. Or Warren was like, I have his phone. Like, somebody call Katie and ask where he is.
How in the world could they claim they had no idea who Katie even was after they themselves dialed her number? They insist they were protecting Nolan's phone, yet they can't even say who was holding that phone. But that isn't the biggest bombshell.
And then they called Katie. They don't even notice. And that's when they found out that Nolan never went with her either. She said that Nolan never went with her, and so no one knows what happened.
Far more chilling, another witness has just unexpectedly reached out with brand new information about exactly what happened to Nolan.
This is something a little bit shocking. Somebody just reached out to me on Facebook. He's verified that he has been talking with the investigators, as you can see in this screenshot, and I'll just read you our conversation. I was on Horn Island on the 4th. I have information I will share with you, but for obvious reasons would like to keep certain parts a secret, as they would absolutely damage the investigation. Let me know if you want. I've had several conversations with investigators. I can be seen in the video in question regarding an altercation. I said, oh, sure.
So, what did this new witness actually reveal? Who is really lying here? And is Nolan's circle of friends truly connected to his death? The answers are coming in today's breakdown. About the background of the leaked audio, the recording captures a private conversation, informal and unscripted, delivered by a female speaker whose voice carries clear agitation and a defensive edge. The speaker is believed to have been present near the group on the day of the outing, possibly one of the two young women associated with the Triton vessel that later became entangled in the sequence of events.
We got out to the island around like 10:30. Everybody was hanging out, having a good time. And then it came time to leave, and so Wyatt was like, Nolan, get on the boat. like, come on, we're leaving, and Nolan was talking to that girl, Katie McCormick, and he was like, oh, I'm just gonna go back. I'm like, well, TikTok only lets you send 1 minute video.
Well, I know.
But he was like, oh, I'm just gonna go back with Katie, and we'll be right behind y'all. We were all going to the same house, the same place. He was like, I'll be right behind y'all. Y'all go ahead without me. I'll see y'all, like, I'm literally gonna be right behind y'all, whatever. So, Wyatt and all them left because they were like, okay, he's just gonna go with Katie, whatever. Well, then everybody got back in and we were all at Ava's house, and Wyatt was like, where's Nolan? He was like, isn't he coming with Katie and them? And they were like, yeah. And Warren was like, let me call him and ask where he is. Or Warren was like, I have his phone. Like, somebody call Katie and ask where he is. And then they called Katie. And that's when they found out that that Nolan never went with her either. She said that Nolan never went with her. And so no one knows what happened. Like, literally no one knows what happened to him, and it's so fucking horrifying. It's sick that people are sitting there blaming that on Eric and all them, like his childhood best friends. Like, it's sick. And none of them would ever do that to him. And like, people are literally texting me, like threatening me. It's like, I don't know, it's just so upsetting.
It's just so upsetting. Shut up.
The speaker describes the group reaching the island around 10:30 in the morning. Activity remained ordinary. People gathered, socialized, and moved freely among the boats and shoreline. When the time came to depart, Wyatt directed Nolan to board. Nolan was at that moment engaged in conversation with a young woman identified as Katie McCormick. According to the speaker, Nolan responded that he intended to follow shortly, that the entire party was headed to the same destination, and that the others should not leave without him. He repeated variations of the same assurance multiple times, emphasizing that he would be immediately behind them. Wyatt and the others with him accepted the statement and left the island under the belief that Nolan would travel with Katie. The speaker then jumps forward in the narrative. The group returned, reassembled, and arrived at Ava's residence. Only at that point did the absence become apparent. Wyatt asked where Nolan was. Someone answered that he had gone with Katie and her companions. Warren, or another member of the group, stated that he was in possession of Nolan's phone and proposed contacting Katie to confirm the location. A call was placed. Katie stated that Nolan had never accompanied her. The speaker concludes that no one knew what had become of him, describing the realization as profoundly distressing. She then turns to a vigorous defense of another group member, Eric, and Nolan's childhood friends, characterizing any suggestion of their involvement as deeply offensive and noting that she herself had received threatening messages. Several clear inconsistencies surface when the account is examined against other statements already on record. The first concerns knowledge of Katie McCormick. In the recording, the group possesses her contact information and places a call to her within minutes of arriving at Ava's house. This level of access stands in direct contrast to earlier public assertions by members of the same circle, including remarks made by Warren in a more formal interview that they did not know Katie at all.
I saw Nolan. It was 3 o'clock. And Nolan was cradling a girl in his arms, Katie, Katie. And Katie, Nolan was sitting there, and the last time I saw him, I looked at Nolan, and Nolan was like shaking his head laughing, and I was like, dude, you crazy. I was like just joking with him. And but anyway, Nolan, that was the last time I laid eyes on him. But when we were leaving, obviously, no one is getting left at the island that came with us unless they demanded to, be there and asked, this is a very common thing at Horn Island. When you're out there, a lot of people ride out there with someone and in with somebody else all the time. I've done that 100 times. It's a very common thing, but Nolan was sitting by the boat with that Katie girl, and my buddy yelled for Nolan, get on the boat. we're leaving. The boat's having issues, and like, no, he didn't say that, but he was panicking. Nolan, get the F on the boat. Get on the boat. And Nolan said, no, I'm staying out here. I'm going to ride in with somebody else. And it's not uncommon to hear, but it's not like my buddy asked him one time. My buddy asked Nolan multiple times to get on the boat. Nolan, get on the boat. Get on the boat. We're leaving. If you're coming, you got to come now. And Nolan made a decision to stay out on the island. And like he said, you know.
How many people heard that? Were there just,
at least
just a
5
few, or?
to, I mean, everyone that was on our boat right there, because the Palm Beach had already left. My buddy went ahead and went home on the Palm Beach, and 3 guys on the way back. And Nolan wasn't the only person to ride out there with us and in with somebody else. I mean, we had multiple people in our group that rode out with us and rode in on someone else's boat. And that, like I said, that's not an uncommon thing to do, you know? I mean, a lot of people do that. I could name probably 50 people out there that day that ran out with somebody and ran back in with somebody else. So, I mean, it's not like it's an uncommon thing, but it's not like we just left him there, or my friends just left him there. Nolan made a decision to stay on the island after my friends asked him multiple times and told him to get on the boat, and he decided to stay.
And I heard the girl that he was with, Katie, had text somebody that she heard people yelling
for
Nolan to get on it. Is that true?
And I have a picture of that. She texted my buddy, and the next day everybody was panicking and everybody's texting Katie, you know, because she was obviously seen with Nolan the whole day at the island. Katie sent a message to my buddy the next day and said, you know, this is the last time I saw him, you know, he's really sweet. But she also mentioned that the last time she saw Nolan was when my buddy was yelling at him to get on the boat. And she was right there to see that Nolan decided not to.
A second discrepancy involves custody of Nolan's phone. The female speaker attributes to Warren the explicit claim that he held the device at the moment the group realized Nolan was missing. Yet the individual who later arrived at the house on behalf of Nolan's mother to retrieve the phone and keys described a different sequence. That person interacted solely with Wyatt, reported that the phone and vehicle keys were located at Jax's residence, and stated that Warren was not present during the exchange. The two versions cannot be reconciled without additional clarifying detail about when and how the phone changed hands between the departure from the island and the arrival of the family representative.
And they sent me to his house, which that boat had never even been in the water. Wyatt did. I never even really talked to Warren. The whole time I was in the house, I spoke with Wyatt. Wyatt is the one who had the phone that supposedly was in his truck or whoever. But Wyatt is who I talked to. I never talked to Warren. I'm not sure why Warren is doing that, but I turned the camera around directly on Wyatt and told my sister. Outside somewhere. They said it was in the truck. I'm not sure where it was at. It took them at least 15 minutes to bring me the phone. By this time, the boys will start, because Wyatt started getting jazzy at the mouth. So my son, Jalen, was like, hey, you better watch your tone, like, don't get smart, my mama.
Right.
Because we trying to see what Nolan, because we trying to figure out why y'all seen y'all ass up in here chilling and Nolan missing. So that's when I asked again, where's the phone? She's gone. That's when he told me she was going to get it. I said, oh, she must have to go back to Horn Island truck outside. Now, mind you, we had to pass all the cars to walk in the house. It's just it's a bunch of lies. I don't feel the need to, like I said, when they go to mentioning Javon, I'm going to say and stand up behind mine every single time. As far as me and that nudge and shit, I don't feel the need to explain anything to any of y'all.
Rests entirely on Nolan's own reported words. The group's decision to depart hinged on his repeated assurances that he would follow with Katie and that everyone was ultimately traveling to the same house. No independent confirmation from Katie or any third party was obtained at the time. When contact was finally made after the group reached Ava's, Katie denied any such arrangement. The gap between Wyatt's departure from the island and the moment the remaining members of the party reassembled at Ava's house therefore becomes critical. The recording supplies no description of the interval, no estimate of elapsed time, no account of the route taken, and no indication of who remained on the island or who traveled together. The phrase, "everybody got back in," is left undefined. It does not identify which individuals returned, whether any members of the original party stayed behind, or whether the group that arrived at Ava's house was identical to the group that had left the shoreline. Additional layers of inconsistency appear when the recording is placed beside the longer interview given by Morgan, Jax, and Warren. In that interview, the three men stated that multiple phones, including Javon's, had been left on the boat and later returned, and that Warren had informed Christine Wells at the earliest opportunity that the group retained Nolan's phone. These assertions sit uneasily alongside both the female speaker's attribution of the phone to Warren and the family representative's account that the device and keys were recovered from Jax's house through interaction with Wyatt alone. The recording itself is silent on several surrounding elements that have surfaced elsewhere. It contains no reference to any altercation, no mention of a witness who claimed to have observed Nolan involved in a fight, and no identification of adults or other parties who remained on the island after Wyatt's group departed.
So I can go ahead first and say, nobody has their phone in the water. Even when you jump in a pool, do you have your phone? Like, no, you don't. You're not going to bring your electronic in the water. So what everybody does is they stick their phones on the dash of the boat and they forget about it because you don't have good service. You can't even send a picture through from Horn Island to like somebody else. And so they put it on the phone, and even as teenagers, we don't really get on them. We go out there and we conversate, and we see a bunch of people that we usually don't see on a day-to-day basis, that we graduated high school with, guys that graduated before us. You know, it's a big meeting, like seeing all your friends that you haven't seen in a while. And so whenever we were coming back in, he didn't even think about grabbing his phone. He never asked about his phone, along with 5 other people that also left their phones on the boat, and we had to wait at the boat launch for them to come and pick them up.
The keys were
they're at my house.
At Jax's house, because we all stayed there the night before. I'm sure if I would have left my truck at Jax's house, I would have left my keys there too. Because
it's just one more thing to think about on the boat.
If I don't have my car or my truck, then why would I bring my keys on the boat? You know. So I mean, there's just no point of bringing it, because if I lose them, then.
If you listen closely to the audio, you will likely notice some quite obvious oddities. The girl consistently prioritizes justification of the group's actions and motives over precise description of individual movements or observations. Pronouns remain collective throughout, with repeated reliance on we and us that binds the speaker's account to the larger circle of acquaintances. Emphasis falls on collective innocence, particularly the assertion that childhood friends would never harm Nolan, and on the personal experience of receiving threatening messages. The structure moves from explanation of why Nolan remained behind to defense of the group, and finally to reaction against external pressure.
So a few questions. The coughing during the video, it almost seems like the girl is acting and that coughing is like, hey, bring it down, bring it down. Like they're trying to defend Wyatt, allegedly. Also, who is Ava? Also, Katie McCormick, his friend today, stated that they didn't know this girl Katie at all, but now it seems like they know Katie, they have her number, and it just makes...
A fact rarely mentioned regarding this audio clip is that it appeared in the earliest phase of public attention, closely timed with Warren Hudson's first interview appearance on Brandon Tatum's platform. The sequence of events described, the specific details selected for emphasis, and even the order of presentation line almost completely with the accounts later given by Warren in formal interviews.
Now, guy number 1 says we loved him dearly, and then he doesn't know what else to say. He looks to who I'm going to call guy number 2 for support. And after he gets this backup, we see him smile a little bit. And you wouldn't think that there should be a smile at that point. Is it a little bit of relief? Possibly, but there's something else going on here. Because when he thinks the camera's off him, at least when the spotlight is off him there, when he's not speaking, we see his mouth go to the side, and that's that oops sign there. That's the oops gesture. So he knows he screwed up, and he's really stressed about it because we see his tongue roll around the inside of his mouth, and that is the sign of, I got away with something. And his lips go really, really tight, so he's holding in.
The high degree of overlap in content and phrasing has led observers to note the possibility of prior alignment of statements among those present. Don't see them being the perpetrators trying to cover up the truth. It is still too early to draw any conclusions. Such coordination of accounts is a predictable response when a group finds itself under sustained public suspicion. Every statement and action is subject to intense scrutiny on social platforms and within the official inquiry. Ensuring internal consistency reduces the risk that an inadvertent discrepancy by one member will be interpreted as evidence against the entire circle. In that context, the alignment itself does not constitute proof of fabrication. It is a rational protective measure for individuals who know their words will be examined for contradiction.
I'm here with a Nolan Xavier Wells update. This is something a little bit shocking. Somebody just reached out to me on Facebook. He's verified that he has been talking with the investigators, as you can see in this screenshot, and I'll just read you our conversation. I was on Horn Island on the 4th. I have information I will share with you, but for obvious reasons would like to keep certain parts a secret, as they would absolutely damage the investigation. Let me know if you want. I've had several conversations with investigators. I can be seen in the video in question regarding an altercation. I said, oh sure, were you really there? I was there during the video in question. I can be seen on the far right walking away. Okay, great. What would you like to say? I will not use your name or anything. Then he sent me these screenshots of the phone calls. I said, I believe you. What would you like to share with me? Thanks. I've been working with investigators. I walked through right after a real fight broke out. I didn't see Nolan or the friends he rode there with around, but I have reason to believe Nolan was part of that fight. What do you think happened to Nolan? Why?
A separate witness account emerged through the channel associated with Secret Service Sam. The female witness stated that she observed the events from a nearby boat. She described an argument centered on Nolan's phone, during which she heard him demanding its return. The dispute escalated into a physical confrontation involving Nolan and several others on shore. A young woman intervened and urged the participants to stop. The witness left the area as the situation appeared to worsen and did not remain to observe the outcome. She later messaged one of the individuals she recognized, stating that she had video footage recorded by her husband and intended to provide the information to police. The video was characterized as limited in clarity yet sufficient to capture the argument itself, with the dispute linked to the presence of a young woman. A similar incident also happened before when a married couple texted Brandon Tatum. They reported observing Nolan engaged in a verbal confrontation that appeared on the verge of becoming physical. Their description did not originate from the same source as the Secret Service Sam witness and therefore constitutes a second, separate claim of conflict involving Nolan on the island.
I received a DM from someone DMing another person. Now, I'm trying to leave these names out because I want to not mess this investigation up. I think law enforcement already have this. That alluded to the fact that, and I messaged this person because I want to talk directly to the person that I saw the DM from. And we haven't talked to this person yet. But the person said in the DM to another kid that is associated, not any of the kids that I interviewed or talked to, but that could be associated to some degree, that knew Nolan, that this person wrote a message saying, me and my husband saw you arguing with Nolan, and to the effect of you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. Now, the person did not say they saw a physical altercation. The person did not say what time they saw Nolan and this other person getting into an argument. Now, this is after Warren, their boat left. This may be somewhere around a little bit before 6, right around 6 or a little bit before 6 p.m.
These accounts appeared in rapid succession after a prolonged period in which no public statements about an altercation had surfaced. The pattern of multiple new witnesses coming forward within a compressed time frame stands in contrast to the earlier silence. A notable feature of the emergence is the chosen channel of communication. The majority of these individuals contacted content creators rather than submitting information directly to the Jackson County Sheriff's Office or to Nolan's family. The family had publicly announced a reward of $125,000 for information leading to the truth, accompanied by a direct contact number. Submission through official or family channels would have carried both potential financial benefit and greater formal weight within the investigation. The preference for intermediary platforms has therefore drawn attention as an unusual procedural choice. The witness account featured on Nancy Grace's program is an expanded version of the statement originally circulated through Secret Service Sam, including the existence of video and the message sent to one of the participants.
I have not spoken publicly about this before, but I witnessed an altercation involving Nolan Wells from a boat nearby. What I saw has stayed with me, and I believe it's important information. I have provided or intend to provide my account to the appropriate investigators because Nolan's family deserves the truth. Out of respect for the ongoing investigation, I won't speculate beyond what I personally observed. While I was on the boat near the area, I witnessed an altercation involving Nolan Wells and several other individuals. I saw what appeared to be an argument that escalated after there was a dispute involving Nolan's phone. I heard Nolan yelling for his phone to be returned. The argument continued after the group reached shore, and I observed a physical fight involving Nolan and multiple people. I also observed a young woman telling them to stop. At that point, I left the area because the situation had appeared to be getting worse. I did not remain long enough to witness what happened afterward. Everything beyond what I personally observed would be speculation, so I cannot honestly say what occurred after I left.
Panel discussion focused on reliability criteria. One attorney stated that failure to deliver the evidence to law enforcement rendered the claim of minimal value and indicated that questions about alcohol consumption on the day would form an immediate line of cross-examination. Brandon Tatum reported that none of the individuals he had interviewed, including those whose text messages he had reviewed, had mentioned any such altercation. He further observed that even if a physical confrontation occurred, it would not by itself establish the mechanism of death. The forensic specialist noted that a second autopsy, which included coronal sectioning of the face, recorded no injuries consistent with significant blunt force trauma of the type expected from sustained fist fighting, such as marks on the knuckles, the backs of the hands, the forearms, or the facial surfaces. The consensus among the panel centered on the necessity of a time-stamped video and formal submission to investigators as the primary measures of evidentiary weight.
Why you're so focused on who had been drinking, let's take a look at the video. Let me answer that for you. Everybody was drinking, okay? Everybody had a snootful. So, even someone drinking can see an altercation, Dubé.
No, of course you can. I can see that crowd of people out there. It was a bustling, hot 4th of July afternoon. But who's to say that the people that she saw included Nolan Wells? And that's why you got to get into her ability to perceive and recollect being impacted by intoxicants such as alcohol. I would want to know if she had imbibed.
Two additional witnesses, distinct from those describing an altercation, were referenced as having placed Nolan still on the island near 6 p.m. after the Triton and accompanying vessels had departed around 4:30 p.m. Their statements remain outside the altercation accounts, yet contribute to the broader timeline questions under examination. The accumulation of these separate claims, their timing relative to earlier interviews, the collective framing in the initial audio, and the choice of indirect reporting channels form the current body of public information surrounding the reported conflict on Horn Island. Move to the side of the legal process. The attorneys representing the acquaintances of Nolan Wells have issued categorical declarations of their client's innocence. In a direct exchange concerning the ongoing grand jury process, the lawyers stated that Warren, Morgan, and Jax are entirely without fault in connection with the events on Horn Island.
Because the grand jury is secret, I am not sure whether the grand jury has started convening or not. We're going to know. But evidence is going to be presented to them. They are going to hear from witnesses. If my clients get an invitation to be a witness at grand jury, they're going to go and they're going to speak to the grand jury. If whoever comes witness, whoever is a person that the DA's office wants to talk to the grand jury, they're going to go. But we're not going to know about that until right up before. We're not given a lot of notice for that.
And then how does it end in your understanding? Like once the prosecutor has presented all the evidence that they have, now what happens?
Well, then the grand jury deliberates. And
what guidance are they given on, are they given guidance in your jurisdiction? Is there a judge involved? Does the prosecutor, who offers up potential criminal indictments that they could reach?
Well, I'm not sure I understand your question, but the best explanation that I can give is the fact that once the grand jury meets and they deliberate and they decide they do not want to go forward, they issue a no bill. That no bill will be put on a list of other crimes or other unnatural deaths that are put on a list called a no bill list. And that can be disseminated I believe at the DA's will and pleasure. Now, it can become public. A lot of times here in Mississippi, it's hard to get a no bill, but I would expect at least the DA to announce what the results were.
We are Tyler, myself, Warren, Morgan, Jax, and the families. We are, other than the Wells family, I can tell you this, we are the most eager for there to be a resolution, a conclusion. We want to know what happened. And if it turns out that this goes down as an unsolved mystery, I think that would be yet another tragedy on top of tragedy. We want answers, and I want to emphasize in the strongest possible terms, we welcome the truth, and we're not sitting here telling you that Warren, Morgan, and Jax are 99% innocent, 99.5%. We are telling you they are 100% innocent, categorically, completely, and they did nothing wrong.
They rejected any formulation that left room for residual doubt, insisting on complete and absolute exoneration, rather than any fractional measure of certainty. The scope of these assertions was deliberately limited. The attorneys emphasized that their knowledge and statements applied solely to their own clients and that they possessed no information regarding any other individuals. The same counsel described the position of the young men and their families as one of active desire for resolution. They positioned themselves as second only to the Wells family in their eagerness for a definitive conclusion, expressing a willingness to accept whatever factual determination emerged. An outcome that left the matter permanently unresolved was characterized as an additional tragedy layered upon the original loss. The attorneys further indicated that their clients stood ready to appear and testify before the grand jury if formally invited to do so. A separate line of inquiry was raised by the interviewer immediately after these declarations. The possibility was noted that investigators might still be examining persons who remained on the island after the group associated with the Triton vessels had departed. The suggestion included a hypothetical scenario in which a witness could have observed Nolan Wells being administered a substance or subjected to treatment, whether intentional or accidental, that later contributed to his death.
I understand your position on that. I'm saying we don't know what else the investigators are looking at or who they're looking at that stayed on the island after your guys left. And there is a possibility that not only did somebody see something, but what they saw was Nolan Wells being given something or treated in a way, accidentally or not, that may have led to his death.
The attorneys did not contest the existence of such a broader investigative avenue. They simply reiterated the boundary of their knowledge, confining all claims of innocence to the three named clients and declining to address any other parties. The interviewer observed that a subsequent indictment of the clients would create tension with the attorney's expressed confidence in the prosecutorial process, though no such development had been indicated at the time of the exchange. The statements therefore established two parallel tracks. On one track, absolute exoneration is asserted for a defined set of individuals who left the island together, accompanied by an open invitation for those individuals to participate in the grand jury if summoned. On the other track, the investigative field remains potentially open with respect to anyone who stayed behind, without any affirmative denial or confirmation from the attorneys representing the departing group. No specific identities, numbers, or observed actions of residual parties were supplied. The possibility was advanced solely as a logical extension of the incomplete public record concerning the hours after the vessels departed. The combination of categorical client-specific denials and the acknowledged openness of the remaining timeline constitutes the present public posture of the legal representatives on both the question of their client's responsibility and the continuing scope of official inquiry. A veteran criminal practitioner with more than 3 decades of courtroom experience, including service as an assistant homicide prosecutor, certification as a criminal trial lawyer in New Jersey, and leadership of a county prosecutor's office that supervised 44 law enforcement agencies, examined the decision by the acquaintances of Nolan Wells to retain counsel. His immediate reaction to reports that the young men had lawyered up was that the step should have been taken far earlier. In his assessment, the volume of public commentary and media activity had already created conditions that risk contaminating potential witness accounts, a problem he had encountered repeatedly while investigating cases under intense scrutiny. He grounded the discussion in the Fifth Amendment's protection of the right to remain silent, a safeguard the Supreme Court has held applies equally to the innocent and the guilty. Any competent defense lawyer, he stated, would advise a client facing public accusations of criminal involvement or cover-up to retain counsel and decline further statements unless formal immunity is granted.
So when I read that the kids lawyered up, I'm not going to lie to you, I was like, what took them so long? The Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, the Supreme Court says, protects the innocent as well as the guilty. Now, I practice law every single day in the real world with real cases, real people, real courtrooms, real consequences. And I say that because I'm not an internet guy that's a non-lawyer, that's on Facebook, that's like spouting out what they think goes on. Any competent defense lawyer would have told these kids to get a lawyer and remain silent unless you receive immunity. It turns out that the lawyering up, which had a nefarious overtone, was them getting civil attorneys. Nothing suggests here that they still are not cooperating with law enforcement, which again, I think they should be asserting their right to remain silent at this point, and then getting the immunity, and then anything they say can't be used against them, and then they can cooperate with law enforcement. It's very interesting to me they're not doing that. They know to hire a lawyer. The lawyers clearly know about the Fifth Amendment, but these kids are still cooperating with law enforcement. These lawyers are civil attorneys, and they're attorneys for Donald Trump, which is like apparently another thing. So what? I mean, the family's got a civil attorney, and that's just fine. But these people who are being attacked, who are being ridiculed, who are being accused of committing a murder, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, I don't know the facts of it, who are being doxxed, who are being attacked, who are being maligned, who are being threatened, they shouldn't have a lawyer? What hypocrisy this is. These lawyers are defamation attorneys, and they're essentially looking into whether or not information that's getting out there is something that's ultimately going to lead to a civil suit down the road. So let me just take a look at my notes here because I want to make sure, and then they're even offering a reward. Look, in all the years I have done this as a prosecutor, okay, a homicide prosecutor, just as an assistant prosecutor and a guy who ran the office, who actually did it. I have never seen a situation in which people who are supposedly targets of an investigation or may know something about foul play, who cooperate with law enforcement, don't assert their right to remain silent, don't ask for immunity, hire a lawyer, but not a lawyer to stop the criminal investigation, not a lawyer to assert their rights to remain silent, but a lawyer to combat what they claim is defamation against them because their reputation is being extraordinarily harmed by what is going on now.
The young men had been portrayed in open discourse as possible participants or concealers of wrongdoing. Under those circumstances, silence constituted a rational and expected response. The retention of counsel, he clarified, involved civil practitioners specializing in defamation rather than criminal defense attorneys engaged to obstruct the investigation or terminate cooperation with authorities. No information indicated that the young men had ceased assisting law enforcement. That continued cooperation while retaining civil counsel struck him as atypical. Standard practice when criminal exposure is perceived would be to request immunity before any further statements. He noted the asymmetry in public reaction. Retention of civil counsel by the victim's family had drawn little criticism, whereas the same step by individuals who had been subjected to public ridicule, accusations of murder, doxing, and threats was treated as inherently suspicious. The civil attorneys were evaluating whether the volume of online statements had caused lasting reputational injury sufficient to support future civil claims. In the practitioner's long experience, he had never observed a comparable configuration. Individuals who might be regarded as investigative subjects continuing to cooperate, declining to invoke silence, forgoing any request for immunity, and simultaneously retaining counsel solely to address defamation, while also participating in efforts to raise funds in support of the inquiry. The absence of criminal counsel from the representation, he observed, itself conveyed information. The civil practitioners did not appear to assess their clients as confronting genuine criminal exposure. He underscored that even if certain details in prior statements proved inaccurate, such discrepancies would not automatically establish participation in a homicide.
Can we just imagine a scenario? I'm just saying. And maybe some of these kids, all these kids, I don't know, did nothing wrong. Can we imagine a situation in which the investigation at the end of the day reveals these kids did nothing wrong? They will forever be under the spotlight because this media circus that was created, not by the family, of these kids, it wasn't created by law enforcement. God knows they don't want to talk about anything, which I think is a big mistake if you've watched my other videos. But because, respectfully, the victim's family went out there and were doing these press conferences and all this media sensation without even knowing the cause and manner of death, these kids, if they are innocent, if they did nothing wrong, their lives are irreparably damaged. Now, maybe at another video, I'm going to get into something that deals with defamation so that you'll have a understanding of that. All right, guys, listen, my followers out there, I really appreciate you asking me. I'm doing these long form videos to better educate people, but I got to be honest, I did this one because you guys asked me to talk about this. Yeah, I was fooled too. Lawyered up. I'm like, wow, all right. But see, everybody thought that was a bad thing. Let me just give you an FYI, a PSA out there for all of you, whether you're in camp this or camp that or camp the other. If law enforcement comes to question you about something where you could potentially face any level of criminal exposure, the advice, like I said, from the caveman to this day, is that you remain silent. I have seen people give statements. Remember the old Cousin Vinny movie where he says, "I stole the tuna," when he's saying it, in a question way, and on a paper it looks like he's admitting he stole the tuna. There have been manipulations, there have been distortions, there have been misunderstandings. There have been people that have looked at statements that people made and said that sounds funny or it doesn't make sense, and they start formulating conclusions. So there is absolutely nothing wrong. If you're ever in that situation, I suggest, I know if I were in that situation, I'm taking the fifth until I can get an attorney. And when I speak to my attorney, if my attorney feels, and this is really, I got a really good point from that.
Media contamination of witness recollections remained a practical investigative hazard, one he had confronted directly in earlier cases. The association of the civil firm with high-profile political clients was dismissed as irrelevant to the legal analysis. Should the young men ultimately be cleared, the reputational damage already inflicted by the sustained public narrative would, in his view, prove difficult to reverse. In recent days, critical new information has surfaced in the death of Nolan Xavier Wells. Katie, the mysterious young woman long identified as the last person said to have been with Nolan on Horn Island, has finally come forward herself and released a series of significant revelations about the case.
There's video on it.
Uh-oh, looks like our girl KK said you're not gonna get me. Look who just uploaded and dropped some receipts to the Biloxi group chat showing where they were at. Our girl KK, and I can't say her name, but it rhymes with Haiti, has provided timestamp receipts, videos, pictures from where she was at in Ocean Springs, and you see the time right down there.
At the same time, Nolan's parents have issued new statements of their own. This time, they have not concealed their suspicions toward the group of friends who left the island without him.
To us, which was out of character, but the premature statements and then just the way that people were moving, it didn't seem trustworthy. And the quality, the people that come, that attract to you, you really have to study them, because everybody that comes to you is not going to be for you.
Yeah.
And I really hammered that down in him when he got to middle school. Watch the people around you.
Wow.
You can't trust everyone.
Wow.
Watch. You got two ears first.
Those claims were then challenged by Brandon Tatum, who identified numerous points he regards as deeply suspicious.
as a woman whose son has died, I understand that you may not be able to go back to work. It's been over a month now. Are you saying to us that you're utilizing the GoFundMe money to maintain your lifestyle while you're not working? He just said, now, Nolan's family is sitting on the front row, and I know you can't stop the pastor from saying this, but even in his sermon, he's continuing to frame this as a racial matter. He said 5 boys on a boat with 5 white boys. Well, we all know that it wasn't just one boat, and Nolan didn't even go on a boat that Jax and Warren were on, or at least Warren wasn't on the same boat. He was on Wyatt's boat. Then everybody came back on different boats and all this other stuff. It wasn't just an isolated situation with 5 white boys and 1 black kid going on a secluded island. It wasn't the case. It was like 20 of them.
What then did Katie actually reveal? Who is lying? And given the unusual actions of recent days, what are they preparing for next? The answers to these mysteries will be laid out in today's breakdown. The latest images linked to Katie McCormack surfaced in a content creator video posted under the handle Secret Service Sam. In that clip, materials described as time-stamped photographs, videos, and location shots from Ocean Springs were said to have been uploaded by Katie herself into a Biloxi group chat. 2 specific times were cited, 5:24 p.m. and 6:02 p.m. Commentators matched the visible face to her Facebook profile and to images previously circulated on accounts referred to as White and Proud.
There's video on it.
Uh-oh, looks like our girl KK said you're not gonna get me. Look who just uploaded and dropped some receipts to the Biloxi group chat showing where they were at. Our girl KK, and I can't say her name, but it rhymes with Haiti, has provided timestamp receipts, videos, pictures from where she was at in Ocean Springs, and you see the time right down there, 6:02 p.m. And guess who's not with her? KK said there's no way y'all gonna keep playing on her name, babes. 5:24 p.m. She's got the receipts. She was not with who y'all said she was with. I mean, she's got multiple receipts. Yeah, like her face, location. That's very clearly her. I mean, this is a picture from her Facebook, and I just matched it with one of the pictures that was posted to White and Proud. All these photos basically giving us timestamps of where she was at. It's very interesting because if she was on the boat with her friends and wasn't where y'all said she was.
The presentation framed the materials as proof that Katie was on the mainland at those hours rather than remaining on Horn Island with any of the individuals previously associated with her in online speculation. The accompanying commentary asserted that she was not with the person earlier rumors had placed beside her, and that if she had traveled with her own group of friends rather than Nolan's circle, the claim that she was the last person seen with him on the island no longer held. Those timestamps stand in direct tension with the account given by members of the group that left with Nolan. Warren Hudson, speaking with Nolan's mother Christine around 11:07 that night, stated that Nolan had decided to stay on the island because of a girl named Katie and had told the others to go ahead without him. That version positioned Katie as the reason Nolan remained after the boats departed around 4:30 p.m. If the Ocean Springs images are accurate, Katie was already on the mainland by 5:24 p.m., eliminating any possibility that she continued as a companion on Horn Island into the late afternoon or early evening. The same images also undercut circulating suggestions that she had been traveling with a particular individual at those later hours. Katie's own reported statements, conveyed primarily through her sister, had already diverged from the friend's narrative. According to the sister, Katie had no knowledge of Nolan saying he would stay behind to talk with her. Instead, Nolan told Katie he needed to return to the boat because his friends were about to leave. The conversation was placed in a window between 3 and 4:30 p.m. Ben Crump summarized the core contradiction in a single line. The young woman said Nolan intended to board the boat. The friends said Nolan stayed with the young woman.
The white girl who Nolan's white best friends are trying to use as an alibi in this situation. Okay, because they claim, and Warren said the same thing to Officer B.T. when he spoke with him. They claim that Nolan told them, I'm going to hang back on this island and talk to Katie. You guys go ahead and I'll get back however I get back. Again, I'm paraphrasing. But guess what? We learned through Katie's sister that Katie said she has no knowledge of Nolan ever saying that. In fact, Katie said, Art, that Nolan told her, I gotta get ready to head back to the boat because my friends are leaving soon. That don't sound like somebody who plans on staying, Art. Okay? According to her sister, Katie said Nolan told Katie, it's time for me to head back to the boat because my friends are going to be leaving soon. As far as I'm concerned, Art, Javon and Katie both threw us an alley-oop. Javon and Katie are throwing Sheriff Ledbetter of Jackson County an alley-oop because neither one of them are corroborating the story of Nolan's white friends on that boat.
Doctor, Umar placed Katie among the 3 people last reported to have seen Nolan alive, alongside Javon and a coach, excluding those he believed responsible for the death. He noted that Katie, speaking as a white witness, had contradicted the friend's version by stating that Nolan had said he needed to return to the boat. Umar described that contradiction as an act of courage and a measure of integrity, observing that both Katie's account and Javon's statement undermined the alibi offered by the group on Warren's boat and placed pressure on the Jackson County investigation.
She spoke to Nolan sometime between 3 and 4:30. Now, her window appears to be wider than everybody else's window. So Javon's window is much smaller. He said, I saw him at 3:40, went to deal with another situation. By the time I came back, they were gone. Katie said I spoke with him between 3 and 4:30. And I allege, Art, one of the reasons that Katie is making her window so wide is she trying to leave a little bit of wiggle room for Warren and them to get their story straight, allegedly. To Katie's sister, she is already cooperating with the authorities. But here's why those 3 got to be spoken to, Art. Not only so we find out what they know, Art, but did they see each other during their conversation with Nolan? Because Javon, if you was talking to Nolan and left him at 3:40, and if Katie was talking to Nolan sometime between 3 and 4:30, and if the coach was talking to Nolan between 3:30 and 4:30, Art, at least 2 of you should have ran into each other. Did the coach see Javon? Did Javon see the coach? Did the coach see Katie? Did Katie see the coach? Did Katie see Javon? Did the coach see Katie? Art, if all 3 of them are saying they saw Nolan for the last time, roughly within the same hour, hour and a half, Art, did y'all run into each other?
At the same time, he maintained distance. He observed that the 3 to 4:30 window was substantially wider than the more precise times given by Javon around 3:40 p.m. and by the coach between 2:30 and 3:30 p.m. He suggested the breadth of Katie's window might have been deliberate, creating room for the others to adjust their statements. Umar emphasized that he did not regard Katie as a participant in any crime, yet he questioned whether the 3 witnesses had encountered one another while speaking with Nolan. If they had not, at least some of the reported times would be inaccurate. His information about Katie came exclusively through the sister, who also indicated that Katie was cooperating with authorities. Umar did not address the later Ocean Springs timestamps. In his analysis, Katie remained a person who had spoken with Nolan on the island during the afternoon. Former Judge Carlos Moore also identified Katie as a pivotal witness and a person of interest in the investigative sense. He pointed to her early willingness to allow her sister to speak publicly and the apparent absence of retained counsel at that stage as factors that distinguished her from several members of Nolan's friend group who had retained lawyers and restricted their social media accounts quickly. Moore did not declare her account fully verified.
Katie seems to be, the young lady Katie McCormick, seems to be a very important witness to be able to say, hey, where did you last see Nolan go towards last? Like, did you see him get on the boat with his friends? Like, how do you feel about her? Any issue with her not being publicly open? We haven't heard from outside her sister's posts. Any concerns with that?
Yeah, she remains a person of interest to me personally. She's very key. She's going to be a star witness because how certain is she that he was going to get on a boat with his friends that he came with? Did anyone else hear him say that? What time did he tell her that? Did she see him physically go towards the boat like he was going to get on? Who did she ride back with? Yeah, she's going to be very key. But what leads me to believe that she's probably more likely telling the truth than others is that she didn't lawyer up. She's been willing to speak through her sister from the beginning without any one saying that she lawyered up. So if she had something to hide, it seems that she would have lawyered up or not been even allowing her sister to speak. I'm still confused as to why her sister is speaking versus her, but at least someone is getting her side out there.
He listed specific points that still required clarification. The degree of certainty that Nolan intended to board the same boat that had brought the group, whether anyone else overheard the exchange, the precise time of the conversation, whether Katie observed Nolan walking toward the boat or only inferred his intention from the words, the identity of the people with whom she returned to the mainland, and the nature of any prior relationship between her and Nolan. Rumors that her father had also been on the water that day prompted further questions about whether she left with him and whether he remained behind.
In this instance, you had several white individuals on an island, and it's not hard to figure out who was there because every person there got there by boat.
Yeah.
And the captain would have to have a list of everyone on the boat, on his or her boat that got out there. So you can, we'll be able to figure out, or the family should be able to figure out, law enforcement should be able to figure out who was on the island, and they should be able to question each one of them under oath, either via subpoena. They can voluntarily come in, they can be subpoenaed, or taken down to the station. But they should be able to question all of those individuals, and based on their based on their answers and their mannerisms, they should be able to tell who's telling the truth. I know lie detector tests are not admissible in court, but certain people may be willing to take lie detector tests and help us figure out who's telling the truth or not.
Moore underscored the distinction between Nolan stating an intention to leave and Katie witnessing him actually board a vessel. He noted that the two competing narratives, one that Nolan stayed for Katie, the other that he was returning to his friends, could not both be accurate, and he leaned toward the version consistent with Katie's reported statements on the basis of her comparative openness. Like Umar, Moore did not analyze the 5:24 and 6:02 p.m. Ocean Springs images. Turning back to recent developments in the case, Nolan's parents have given new interviews that share additional details on the issues now at the center of public dispute. In conversations with Pastor Jamal Bryant and in later appearances, Christine and Elmore Wells described a household rule they called an open door policy. They told their children the door stayed open at all times. Even if one of them slipped out, something the parents said never happened, the instruction was clear. If a situation felt unsafe, drop a location pin and the parents would come, no matter the hour. They recalled once retrieving a 15-year-old at roughly 2 in the morning. Nolan himself frequently called his mother and checked the family, Life 360 app. Christine would joke that he was tracking her movements. The parents said they taught their children that intimate relationships required direct conversation and that they themselves avoided loud arguments in front of the kids.
We never want to get to a point where in front of our kids we're just like, really going at it. We want to talk about it, right? And so teaching them that, hey, when you're in relationships like this, intimate relationships, you have to be able to communicate. And that's one thing we told them, even just amongst yourselves, we always told our kids, open door policy. If you're ever out, even if you snuck out the house, which they didn't do, but if that ever came, if it ever happened, we would be like, if you're in a situation where you're uncomfortable, drop that location. We are coming. It does not matter.
Yes, I love it.
We went to pick up the 15-year-old at like 2:00 in the morning. We do not play about our kids.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Nelson Mandela in his autobiography.
The same interviews returned repeatedly to the speed of official statements. Christine and Elmore said law enforcement conclusions arrived before any investigation was complete. When Nolan was recovered on July 6, they recalled the sheriff already declaring no foul play. Their response was immediate. Their son was a college athlete who knew how to swim. The island held 300 to 400 people that day, and the idea that he simply drowned without anyone noticing struck them as impossible.
Just
premature statements before an investigation was made.
Yeah.
That, along with stuff that was told to us, which was out of character, but the premature statements and then just the way that people were moving, it didn't seem trustworthy. And
because I know early on when there was so much anger and emotions were high, you know, I literally was like, look, if you allow that anger to consume you,
yeah,
and if you act out irrationally, even for a moment, because we're hurting so bad, I was like, I can't do this by myself.
Yeah.
Like, I can't lay our child to rest, still wear the hats we have to wear as adults and parents.
Yeah.
And then, like, I can't be by myself. So I want to say thank you.
It's beautiful.
for hearing me.
Wow.
Because I know how hard it's been for you. I know people have kind of focused in on me, but I always say he's grieving just as much as I am. That was just as much.
Al Sharpton, who later delivered the eulogy, called the early no foul play announcement a prejudgment issued roughly 2 days after the disappearance, before anyone knew what had occurred. Benjamin Crump framed the family's objective from the first call onward as truth, transparency, and a thorough inquiry, trust but verify. On the opposing side of the public argument, commentator Tatum did not address the timing of the sheriff's statement. Instead, he criticized the family and Crump for reaching their own early conclusions that pointed at the young men on the boat and at race before evidence existed, placing teenagers under suspicion of killing a friend.
Have you found any consistencies? Have you spoken directly with any of his friends?
Well, the first inconsistency was you called me and tell me my son stayed on the island to talk to a girl. My son would never do that. That's not in his character. I didn't raise none of my kids to do that. The second thing is, you say he doesn't have his phone. He doesn't leave his phone. I would wake up sometimes in the morning and Nolan would have his phone here right in my face. And I'm waking up cussing and fussing like, boy, you don't get the camera on my face. And he just laughing and giggling and stuff like that. So it's twice. To me, there's 2 lies that he told me as a father.
Elmore isolated 2 statements he regarded as lies, then added a third. The first concerned the claim that Nolan had stayed on the island to talk with a girl he had just met. Warren Hudson telephoned Christine at 11:07 p.m. on July 4 and said Nolan chose to remain behind with Katie. Elmore answered that he had not raised any of his children that way and that Nolan would never have done so. Christine, still on the call, reacted with disbelief. Her son was not the type to throw caution aside for a stranger. The second statement involved the phone. The group said Nolan left his phone because there was no reception. Elmore rejected that account outright. He described mornings when he woke to find Nolan's phone pressed against his face while the boy laughed. On the morning of July 5, Christine held a full conversation with her grandmother while walking the island, and Elmore received calls of his own. Their service worked without interruption. He therefore refused the explanation that poor signal forced Nolan to abandon the device.
When we got to the house, it was some of his other friends were there, and they were, beating on the door like, "Where Nolan at? Where Nolan at?" Beating on the door trying to get in the house. So I walk up to the door and I'm calming them down because, for one, okay, you're loud. 2, you're in these people's house. So if you tear these people's house up, that's gonna be a whole nother issue. I don't want y'all bothering that. And 3, I need you guys to calm down, and I need them to kind of trust me as being an adult so I can get something out of it. So I get them out the house, and then Jax finally comes down the stairs, I guess in the room. Hair all messed up like he just woke up, whatever. I said, look, I'm Nolan's father. His car's outside. I need to get his car and all his personal effects that may be left over with. And he goes, oh man, Nolan was like my brother. I said, well, Nolan was like my brother. I said, well, if Nolan was like your brother, would you please go and get everything of his so I can get his car, I can go home. So he walks off, 2 or 3 minutes later, he come back. I don't see the keys. Okay. So I leave out the house, go back outside, stand by the car. During that time, one of the guys that was in the house, one of the other friends, he was on the phone with a girl who was apparently there.
After those 2 points, Elmore counted a third episode involving the car keys. When he went to Jack's house to retrieve them, Jack first said he could not find the keys. Then a short time later, a friend inside the house received a call from a girl who directed them to the top of an Xbox in the bedroom. The keys appeared. Elmore told the interviewer that after 3 such episodes, he no longer believed anything coming from that direction, though he remained outwardly cordial while watching carefully. The parents also spoke about the campaign of online attacks and professional pressure that followed their public questions. Christine said she had predicted from the first night that her nursing career would be targeted. What arrived included fabricated 1-star reviews that her clinic verified as false, a complaint filed with the State Board of Nursing that opened a professional misconduct file despite the absence of supporting evidence, and an investigator who apologized for the timing while explaining he still had to complete due diligence. She told him to proceed, stating she knew the care she gave patients and that many of them continued to trust her.
It's funny because, and this is what I mean by discernment.
Yes.
I have always been someone who was just very in tune, not just with myself, but people, situations. And that night before it hit the internet, we were in bed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, they're going to come for my career.
You said that.
I told him, I was like, they're going to come for my career. I don't know if it is going to be now, in a few weeks, in a few months. I said, but I am telling you, they are going to come for my career. And when I say they, I'm not talking about any specific group of people, just people who don't like the fact that we are just wanting answers.
Yes.
We're just wanting the truth.
Circulating images included AI-generated photographs claiming she had bought a sports car. She answered that she still drove the same older vehicle. She described the volume and intentional cruelty of the online material as something she had never previously encountered and said its purpose appeared to be intimidation. The bullying, she noted, was no longer limited to school-age children. Adults in active mourning were receiving it. She thought of younger people such as Aubrey Wyatt and worried that the pattern being modeled would be repeated by the next generation. The family emphasized they had never begged for GoFundMe donations and had simply accepted contributions if people chose to give. Neither parent had returned to work since early July. Elmore added that when they appeared in public, strangers still approached, took their hands, and offered prayers, and that those moments outweighed the noise online. Christine's closing position was that critics could say whatever they wished about her personally, so long as they did not silence the demand for answers about her son. A nail technician who had helped connect the family with counsel was also harassed, prompting Christine to withhold the helper's name.
Elmore and I have not been to work since July, early July.
Yeah.
That first week, we've not been to work. And I'm going to be honest with you, the profession that I have sometimes is emotionally heavy.
Yeah.
So now I have to kind of sit within myself and be like, okay, are we really ready for this? Are we ready to go back to that life? But it's been that hurt.
No,
seeing it.
I
that
can't
hurt.
imagine.
Cases similar to ours, I've never seen this. I've never seen that. And it's, the cyberbullying component of it.
Yeah.
And so, and I hate to say it, but it's so sad. Like, sometimes it takes you to a place. And so as I'm sitting here experiencing this, I think about kids, particularly in our community. Her name was Aubrey Wyatt. I think about those situations and I'm like, my God, like feel like sometimes I'm barely holding on.
Wow.
This, like, just thinking from a child's perspective who hasn't been through life, who hasn't been through anything, to know that they would have to endure something like this, because this stuff is taught. You're not like, and that's why as parents we have to be careful, because you guys, this is not cool. Like bullying other people. If you have children, your children are gonna see this at some point.
Oh no, for sure.
And then that carries over to, how they're gonna behave and how they're gonna treat others.
Yeah.
Brandon Tatum directed sustained attention to the GoFundMe campaign established after Nolan Wells' death. He noted that public donations had reached approximately $700,000 to $800,000 and asked what donors believed the money would support. Funeral expenses, he stated, had been covered by Tyler Perry. The independent autopsy had been paid for by Colin Kaepernick. Al Sharpton's eulogy, in Tatum's understanding, carried no separate fee and was absorbed into the funeral arrangements Perry financed. With those major costs already met by outside contributors, Tatum asked where the remaining hundreds of thousands had gone. He referenced Christine Wells's own statements that neither she nor Elmore had returned to work since the first week of July, that her profession carried heavy emotional weight, and that she was still weighing readiness to resume. Tatum asked whether the fund was sustaining the household during that extended leave. He contrasted the situation with Ashley Cole, Warren Hudson's stepmother, who continued working despite public accusations against her stepson and despite multiple arrests already made for threats against her family. He further noted that the 18 and 19-year-old friends of Nolan had not been afforded the luxury of pausing college or careers while public suspicion rested on them.
They raised $700,000, $800,000, but Tyler Perry paid for the funeral. Colin Kaepernick paid for the secondary autopsy. Allegedly, Al Sharpton did the eulogy for free. Or, no, let me say he did the eulogy for free. Tyler Perry paid for it. I'm assuming that his eulogy honorarium comes with the funeral proceeding. So now that all of that is out of the way, where's $800,000 going to? As a woman whose son has died, I understand that you may not be able to go back to work. It's been over a month now. Are you saying to us that you're utilizing the GoFundMe money to maintain your lifestyle while you're not working? Is that what you're saying? Why is Mr. Elmore not at work? It's been over a month now. What's the next play? The day that Nolan was put into the ground, the day of his funeral, there was paperwork filed to open an estate in his name. I was told, and I think common sense tells you, when they open an estate in his name, they're preparing to sue somebody for a wrongful death suit. Benjamin Crump has gotten people $700 million, $800 million, $500 million, $50 million, $30 million, $20 million, $10 million, $5 million, $2 million in wrongful death settlements in civil court. They've sued these police departments and gotten tons of money in wrongful death suit. Now, I think the play is this, is that they will not go back to work because they're going to try to prepare to sue to get a wrongful death payout. And $700,000 plus a multi-million-dollar wrongful death payout, why would you have to go back to work? You can invest that in some property, put that in the SP 500, put that in an index fund, and you can live off the interest. Especially if you get a $20 million, $30 million, $50 million, $100 million wrongful death suit.
Tatum connected the fund's size to a larger trajectory. He observed that a foundation bearing Nolan's name had been announced around the time of the burial and interpreted the move as preparation for a wrongful death civil action. He cited Benjamin Crump's record of securing multi-million-dollar civil settlements, often against law enforcement agencies, and sketched a scenario in which the existing $700,000 to $800,000 fund, combined with a future multi-million-dollar judgment, could generate interest sufficient to eliminate any need for conventional employment. In Tatum's analysis, the priority was therefore not solely justice for Nolan, but a media circuit and civil litigation strategy. The family, in the same public record, stated they had never solicited donations, had simply expressed gratitude when contributions arrived, and had described the fund as a practical buffer against the many costs that accompany such a loss while both parents remained away from work. Alongside the financial critique, Tatum addressed the public posture toward the young men who had been on the island with Nolan. He rejected any claim of proven racial motive, noting the absence of evidence for such a motive and questioning why a national civil rights attorney had been retained rather than local Mississippi counsel if race were not the intended frame. He observed that Crump's team had not initiated contact. Friends of the Wells family had arranged the introduction. Tatum asked why the family had not instead engaged a white attorney, a local white congregation, or a community gathering that reflected the mixed circles in which Nolan actually moved. He criticized sermons, including one delivered by Jamal Bryant, while the family sat in the front row, that continued to cast the events as a racial confrontation of 5 white youths and 1 black youth.
Why are you still framing this as if it was one black guy and 5 white boys? And claiming if the roles were reversed racially, we know this wouldn't have happened. How do you know that? Give me an example in Mississippi in recent future or recent times that this has happened. These are the people that are representing black folks today. This mother's grieving her son is dealing with that kind of person that made it all about race. Acting like an investigation is somehow thwarted or untoward because it's taking longer, and y'all didn't even give them the phone, so they didn't even have that to investigate. That's the part that bothers me. Why are we still talking about this? This is what makes me mad, and y'all get mad at me for pointing it out. It's not right to keep pushing this race stuff. To me, it seemed to be reasonable for her to come out in public and say, hey, that Warren kid, when I talked to him, he responded, he was respectful, and he answered all my questions. He wasn't evasive or anything. Please let off of this boy. This was one of my son's friends. And we don't need everybody getting out. That's what should have happened. And the mom reached out, and all these other people from the other side, the white side, reached out to them, and they never responded to him. If you really thought it was that much of a deal and there was so much suspicious, weird things going on, why don't you come together as families and talk through this, so when you disseminate things to the public, you're not hurting another family that really didn't deserve this. You know, we talk about Miss Christine getting 1 complaint. People have gone to jail for threatening Ashley Cole, Warren's stepmother.
Tatum described the actual scene differently. Roughly 20 people across 3 boats. Nolan having traveled on a vessel other than the one carrying Warren Hudson, the groups returning on separate boats, and the island itself occupied by hundreds of boats and, in his estimate, as many as 1,000 people that day. In that setting, he argued, the simplified racial binary did not hold. Tatum stated that the family's public questions had produced consequences beyond inquiry. He pointed to text exchanges between Christine Wells and Warren Hudson in which Warren answered every request, location data, clothing description, without evasion. In Tatum's view, good faith would have required the mother to state publicly that Warren had been responsive and respectful, that he had been one of her son's friends, and that the public should ease pressure on him. He noted that the White families had initiated contact while the Wells family, in his account, had not reciprocated at the same level. He asked why the 2 households had not first spoken privately if genuine suspicion existed, rather than allowing the dispute to damage an additional family. 5 people had already been arrested for threats against Ashley Cole and the Hudson household. 3 additional recorded calls had threatened Warren's father's life. Tatum asked how many arrests had been made for harassment of Christine Wells. He emphasized that the teenagers now struggled to enter ordinary stores because the prevailing narrative cast them as Nolan's killers, a status he attributed to the combined effect of the family's questions and their attorney's public framing. Tatum stopped short of any criminal accusation against the young men. His conclusion remained that the manner in which the case had been presented had inflicted lasting harm on them and had opened a path toward civil litigation rather than a purely memorial pursuit of facts. A bombshell update just dropped today. Cajun Navy Commander Josh Gill, the man who stood beside Nolan's mother in the very first hours of the search, has now revealed information that is nothing short of explosive about Nolan's behavior that night.
Then I got a call. I got a call from Miss Christine. Christine called me up. I'm thinking it was 7:30-ish, 7:45 that morning, and we discussed what was going on. So I asked, and basically what she told me is that her son had gone out the day before, that on the 4th, with a bunch of his friends. That's key.
Even more striking, the phone was already on the table from day one. Christine was actively preparing to hand it over to authorities at that exact moment.
Mars Lake, and she sent me a message that morning and said, you know, where are we going to meet? As soon as we're done with the data dump on the phone, we'll meet up with you.
But buried inside Josh Gill's account is one detail that has left viewers stunned, a moment many are calling the single biggest mistake of the investigation, while others are calling it the most calculated cover-up yet.
I was the one who offered the cadaver dogs.
Oh, okay.
I had a conversation with the lead attorney. I had a conversation with the lead attorney, Liza Park, when I went and spoke to the young men as well, because they told me how they cleaned the boat. And they said, man, Josh, all we did was spray it down with fresh water, because that's a common practice whenever you remove a vessel from salt water. Just spray it down, get the salt of it, and go there.
So what exactly did Nolan's mother say in those early hours? Why did she suddenly reverse course on the phone? And who cleaned that boat before any independent search could happen? The answers are coming in today's breakdown. According to what has been recounted, everything started in the evening of July 4, when she placed multiple calls to her son Nolan's phone, beginning around 8 p.m., followed by additional attempts, and one logged at approximately 10:48 p.m. None were answered. At 11:07 p.m., Warren Hudson, one of the young men who had been with Nolan on Horn Island, called her. Hudson stated that Nolan had remained on the island with a young woman named Katie and that the group was in possession of Nolan's phone. Christine's immediate reaction was recorded as panic. She ran into her bedroom, checked the Life 360 application, and saw the phone's location indicated on land. Hudson confirmed the group held the device. Within minutes, she contacted her close friend Tashima Hands, mother of two of Nolan's longtime friends. Those friends opened Snapchat and observed a location still pointing toward the island, creating an immediate discrepancy with the Life 360 data. These events were directly confirmed by both Nolan's mother and Warren.
You know, at 5:44, the boat returns, Nolan is not there. At 11 p.m., he calls to say Nolan is missing. I wonder if either of you, whoever wants to answer, what happened in those few hours that prompted Warren to be concerned?
I'm not quite sure what would prompt him to be concerned, but all I can say is what I did that day. So me and my sister, we made an order of pancit, which is a Filipino noodle dish for one of our friends. They were having a big family get together, and we really didn't have anything planned for the 4th. So me and my sister are, cleaning up, and this is about 8. And she's like, hey, Nolan hasn't texted us. And that was the thing, Nolan was really big with communication with us, right? And so I call him, doesn't answer, I end the call, call back, and this is probably, I think, maybe around 8. Don't quote me on the times, guys. So then I call again later around 8, still no answer. And then I want to say I called one more time, and I think that was at 10:48. So I'm in the kitchen, my phone rings. Now this is probably early 11 o'clock, somewhere around there. Phone rings when I make it back to the phone, and I'm like, whose number is this? Because, we get weird phone calls sometimes. They didn't leave a message. Number pops back up. I pick up the phone because it says maybe Warren. And I'm like, Warren? So this is 11:07. That's per my cell phone records. So I answer the phone, and he's like, hey, Miss Christine, have you seen or talked to Nolan? I said, no. Why? He should be with you guys. And he said, oh, no, well, when we went to the island, there was a girl named Katie that he met, and he had decided to stay behind. And I said, what? Because we know our child. And Nolan isn't one to be like, oh, well, I'm just going to throw caution to the wind, and I'm going to stay here with this girl that I just met. So I'm on the phone with him. Now I'm in a panic. I'm running into my room. Elmore was in bed watching a different movie, and I'm like frantic. He's like, what's going on? I'm like, Nolan is missing. I'm trying to pull up the GPS as I'm talking to him, and at some point he tells me that, I was like, well, his phone says GPS Life 360, not Snapchat.
Right.
Life 360 says that he's on land, and he was like, well, no, I mean, well, we have his phone. And I'm like, wait, what? And I'm like, okay. Because at that point, you're telling me, this is coming from Warren, don't worry about it. We're going to find him. It's going to be okay. Don't tell me not to worry. This is my child.
my flesh and blood that I brought into this world, and you're telling me not to worry.
The thing is, you say he doesn't have his phone. He doesn't leave his phone. I would wake up sometimes in the morning and Nolan would have his phone here right in my face. And I'm waking up cussing and fussing like, boy, you don't get the camera on my face. And he just laughing and giggling and stuff like that. So it's twice. To me, there's 2 lies that he told me.
Christine next dialed the Department of Marine Resources, the Ocean Springs Police Department, the nearest hospital, and the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. Each agency directed her to another, citing jurisdictional boundaries. On the way to the police station, she stopped at the hospital to ask whether anyone matching Nolan's description had been brought in. Staff reported no. After midnight, she and her husband Elmore met a Jackson County deputy in a McDonald's parking lot to file the missing person report. At 11:55 p.m., she posted a public Facebook appeal for help locating her son. Around that same time, Tashima Hands went to the group's home to retrieve the phone. The events unfolded just as the group had described in previous interviews. When Christine and her sister examined the device, they found both Snapchat accounts empty of any posts from the preceding 24 hours, an absence they described as inconsistent with Nolan's usual pattern of recording video while out with friends. This made them suspicious and prompted them to ask the police to investigate. At first light, Christine, Elmore, Nolan's high school football coach, and one of Elmore's former classmates, launched their own search. They used a privately obtained boat, walked sections of Horn Island, and maintained continuous cell service throughout. Concurrently, around 7:30 to 8 a.m., Christine contacted Josh Gill, incident commander for the United Cajun Navy. Gill later stated that during these initial conversations, Christine showed no concern about racial issues or suspicion of foul play, but instead repeatedly emphasized that her son had been drinking with friends the day before.
She didn't say that there were any mental health crisis or any mental health issues going on, and explained to me about her son. Again, model citizen, great kid. Everybody's all-American, the guy everybody wanted to hang out with. Did say that he had been drinking the day before, but he was out with a bunch of his friends. And
this is an extremely important detail because the official search documentation generated on July 5 by the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources listed alcohol intake, heavy based on witness statements supplied to the Coast Guard and other responding agencies. The notation was subsequently reported by multiple national outlets. Friends present that day, including Hudson, described group drinking that intensified as the afternoon progressed. But Nolan appeared completely fine in their interactions. Christine's own early account to Gill acknowledged that Nolan had been drinking the day before, yet framed him as a model citizen and disciplined athlete. In later statements, she cited a witness who described Nolan as perfectly fine and not a sloppy drunk, underscoring that the weekend fell immediately before the return to campus and the start of football training.
Us as parents, we definitely had that influence, but Nolan was just naturally a peacemaker.
Yeah.
And after that it was, 8, and then he got ready to go. He did his normal, hugged us up, I love you, Mom. I was like, be safe, knowing this was going to be his last weekend before going back to school, because football was starting, the summer training was starting. And this was his second year at Southwest, and so we knew this was going to be a big year for him. Dad and him had been training and doing all these things and really just kind of sitting with him and letting him know, like, hey, we're going to the next stage in your life as well as, your football career. So the focus was there, and he was ready.
A Cajun Navy spokesman separately conveyed the understanding that blood alcohol results, once available, would not show an intoxicated level, though official toxicology from the state autopsy remained unreleased. The independent autopsy performed on July 10 likewise withheld toxicology findings and classified both cause and manner of death as undetermined, while noting dense red soft tissue hemorrhage in the occipital region. These competing characterizations of alcohol use produced divergent investigative hypotheses. The heavy designation supported theories of accidental drowning linked to impaired judgment and strong currents around the island. The family's emphasis on Nolan's athletic discipline and reported sobriety supported the counterposition that he would not have entered the water voluntarily or lost control under moderate consumption. Another shocking piece of information regarding the controversial phone has been revealed. Gil told that Christine's early posture was one of conditional cooperation. On July 5, she informed Gil that authorities wanted the device and expressed discomfort about simply surrendering it. Gil advised her of her right to document every step, including video recording of any extraction process, to preserve data integrity. She appeared receptive. The family had already retrieved and examined the phone themselves the previous night.
So the next day is really key. That Monday morning, we were communicating back and forth, and I had a fixed wing that was going up. It's an airplane at about 6:30, 6:35 that morning, and I offered for her to go in the plane. I said, look, if you want to go up in the plane, the offer is there. I don't recommend it, but I need to at least express that offer to you and make it there for you. She declined that request, so I'm on my way there to the boat launch where the Tactical Operations Center was at Mars Lake. And she sent me a message that morning and said, where are we going to meet? As soon as we're done with the data dump on the phone, we'll meet up with you. So that made me believe that, hey, they were going to the police department, whatever it was, to do that data dump on the phone. And then we got the call. I've seen the communications with Christine and her family dwindle down after the hiring or onboarding of Mr. Crump. Now, again, I want to make sure that everybody understands I'm going to give the family the respective space that they need.
However, after Benjamin Crump's firm became involved, the timeline shifted. Joint inspection with the district attorney's office was agreed upon in mid-July, yet by mid-August, the device had still not been fully transferred. The district attorney's office issued a letter demanding prompt production while the family was out of state. Counsel maintained willingness to cooperate through simultaneous examination at a specialized laboratory. Gil observed that communication from the family became markedly shorter after Crump's entry, reducing from detailed exchanges to brief acknowledgments. Such behavior is hardly surprising when considering Crump's history of strained relations with law enforcement in previous cases and the tactics he typically employs. Crump's broader practice pattern in high-profile cases has centered on rapid public framing, national press conferences, and forensic examinations, and explicit linkage to historical patterns of racial disparity.
Prosecutor, but this is the Ben Crump model. He goes into a city, creates a narrative, cherry picks facts to establish, to prove that narrative, creates chaos in a community, misrepresents the facts, and then he leaves with his money and then asks the community to pick up the pieces.
Ben Crump is a civil rights lawyer in several high-profile cases throughout the country, including the Breonna Taylor case. In the interview, Cameron criticized Crump for spreading falsehoods about the case. The Attorney General said he has a responsibility to present the case to the grand jury with facts and without bias. Cameron recommended that just one of 3 officers involved in the raid on Taylor's apartment be charged for firing into a neighboring apartment.
Back to the victim's mother, Gil told that she made no reference to racial factors or suspicions of foul play during the initial exchanges on July 5. Gil described her as a frantic mother focused solely on locating her child. No indications of racial concerns surfaced in those conversations while she maintained close contact with the volunteer search team. The official timeline released by the United Cajun Navy similarly records that throughout the support provided on July 5 and 6, Christine offered no comments linking the disappearance to race or intentional harm. This is in complete contrast to the suspicions regarding Nolan's group of friends that she voiced in later interviews.
And did you get any indication that she was concerned about race or it being a factor in this, or foul play or anything?